In 2014, Jerad Gourdin and 60-year-old Belen Perez were neighbors residing 2 houses apart in a typically quiet and safe neighborhood in Provo, Utah. Belen Perez lived in a small home with her adult son, while Jerad Gourdin, who had recently been released from prison and was unemployed, temporarily resided in a house where he slept on the couch. The owner of the house was caring for Jared's 1-year-old daughter, and he also allowed Jared's girlfriend and mother of his child to stay there. Across the street from Belen Perez's place was a house known as Tweakerville due to its reputation for drug use, particularly methamphetamine. During Jared's incarceration, his girlfriend had a child with a resident of Tweakerville. Despite that fact, Jerad and his girlfriend were trying to work things out. Jared's girlfriend had a drug habit. She was using marijuana, pills, and methamphetamine at Tweakerville. This influenced Jerad to start using methamphetamine as well. By mid-May 2014, Jerad had escalated to injecting meth intravenously, causing his girlfriend to fear him and his increasingly erratic behavior. She stated that she started questioning having anything to do with him because of how crazy he was behaving. On the morning of May 21, 2014, Jerad left the house early looking for yard work jobs in the neighborhood. Initially, Jerad asked a neighbor to borrow a lawnmower, but his behavior left the neighbor feeling uneasy, and he refused to lend him his lawnmower. He was described as acting bizarre, grinding his teeth, staring past the neighbor into his house as they spoke, and excessively sweating. Despite exhibiting this odd behavior, he managed to get a lawnmower from a different neighbor, and he successfully landed a mowing job. Jerad was acting nervous and fidgety, and although his behavior made the neighbor feel uneasy, he impressed her with the quality of his work, and she gave him $20 for mowing her lawn. Around 10:30 or 11 that morning, Jerad visited Belen Perez's home to ask her if he could mow her lawn. Belen was a native Spanish speaker. Due to this language barrier, they struggled to come to an agreement. Belen's son was at work, so she suggested that Jerad should talk to him after he returns home. During their interaction, Jerad stood by the fence to look at the backyard without entering it. Jerad shook Belen's hand, and she handed him an address book to write down his contact information. However, Jerad stated that he didn't have a phone number and left the book on a sewing machine beside the door before mentioning that he lived 2 houses down from her. After Jerad returned home, his girlfriend asked him about his whereabouts. He refused to answer and headed straight to the bathroom to take the first of what would be 2 unusually long showers that day. When his girlfriend asked him about the showers, he denied taking them and stated he was only washing his face. Around noon, Jerad visited a nearby convenience store. The store clerk noticed that he seemed to be drenched in sweat and was acting really paranoid. Jerad wandered back and forth in the aisles for approximately 30 minutes before spending another half an hour in the bathroom. The clerk got a really bad vibe and he didn't feel very safe. Later that afternoon, Jerad continued looking for yard work in the neighborhood. One neighbor chose not to answer the door when Jerad knocked, as she felt uncomfortable and unsafe around him, especially after noticing him inspecting the sides and rear of her house. Another neighbor, aware of the widespread methamphetamine problems in the area, speculated that Jerad may have been high on meth, and he felt extremely uneasy about having him near his home. Between 2 and 4 p.m., another neighbor noticed Jerad acting weird. She described him as looking like he was trying to walk but wanted to run. Jerad would run for a minute and then stop and look over his shoulder. This led her to believe that he had done something wrong. Just before 4 p.m., Belen's son returned home from work to a heart-wrenching discovery: his mother's lifeless body lying on the living room floor. She had been strangled with an electrical cord that had apparently been taken from the back of a boombox, and her body had been doused in what appeared to be bleach. Overcome with shock and despair, her son cried out for help, alerting a neighbor who rushed to their aid. He attempted to revive his mother through CPR. The neighbor made a frantic call to 911, but by the time paramedics arrived, it was tragically too late to save Belen. After learning about Belen Perez's murder, Jared's girlfriend approached him in a state of distress, questioning him and asking him if he had murdered her. Jerad denied any involvement, reacting defensively and telling her not to accuse him of that. He was very agitated and paranoid. He couldn't sit still, paced back and forth, and was looking out the windows. He avoided going outdoors altogether, which she found odd, because usually he's the type of person that if he sees something going on, he's going to go outside and see what's up. Upon their arrival at Belen Perez's residence on the afternoon of May 21st, police officers wasted no time in examining the crime scene. They carefully gathered crucial pieces of evidence, including the electrical cord used in the murder, Belen Perez's purse, notably missing around $300, and 3 empty containers of cleaning products found near her body. Additionally, a distinctive Camel filter cigarette butt with a red stripe, a brand neither Belen Perez or her son smoked, was discovered in the backyard. Belen's son found a Walmart receipt showing that Belen Perez was at Walmart alive at 1:06 p.m. This was later verified by surveillance footage from the store. This crucial detail narrowed the time of death between 1:15 and 3:45 p.m. The police initially suspected Belen's son as a potential suspect. However, he had an alibi. He stated that he was at work all day, which the police were able to confirm. The focus of the investigation then shifted towards interviewing neighbors, eventually leading the police to look into Jared's involvement in the murder. The police searched the property where Jerad was living at, and they found burnt clothing in a backyard fire pit and multiple Camel cigarette butts, some with red stripes and others with blue stripes, scattered across the yard. The police spoke with Jerad 3 times over the course of their investigation. Jerad was first questioned on the night of the murder as part of an initial neighborhood canvass. During the questioning, an officer noted that Jerad seemed off, was avoiding eye contact, and was grinding his teeth and clenching his jaw every time they tried speaking to him. Jerad mentioned that he had visited Belen Perez's home that morning looking for work. However, due to the language barrier, he could not properly communicate with her, so he just left. The second meeting happened the following day on May 22nd at the police station, when Jerad voluntarily came forward to make a formal statement. At that point, Jerad was already a person of interest in the murder. Jerad provided additional details on his visit to Belen Perez's house, admitting that he was standing by her door and possibly stepped inside the doorway, but he maintained that no physical contact happened. Jerad also disclosed how his girlfriend had expressed concerns about his whereabouts on the day of the murder, which he perceived as her indirectly accusing him of killing Belen Perez. Jerad told the officers that he told his girlfriend that he was not involved in the murder, and that he had nothing to hide. Jerad also shared details of recent altercations with people from Tweakerville. He said it was because his kid was over there, and they all smoked dope. The third meeting happened 5 days later at the county jail, where Jerad was in custody for an alleged assault on a Tweakerville resident in an unrelated incident. At this point, Jerad was a lot higher on the radar for police, as far as a suspect in this case. During the third interview, Jerad told the officers that in addition to stepping inside Belen Perez's house on May 21st, he had also shaken her hand and touched her address book. The detectives made an effort to elicit a confession from Jerad during this interview, resorting to lying about DNA evidence. They falsely told Jerad the following: "The evidence says you're our guy, chemicals don't wash off the DNA, and your DNA is there and on her." They told him that the killer tried to cover their tracks, but the science is going to bring that out and it's pointing at you. Despite these tactics, Jerad maintained his innocence. The officers insinuated that Jerad might have committed the murder while high on drugs, and that's why he does not remember. The officers told him, "You seem like a nice guy, so this has got to be the drugs." Jerad acknowledged his struggles with drug addiction, and that some family members described him as violent. Throughout the interrogation, the officers challenged Jerad about inconsistencies in his story regarding how much physical contact he had with Belen on the day of her murder. They told him, "Every time we ask you about touching Belen Perez and where you were at in Belen Perez's house, it changes." Towards the end of the interview, Jerad pressed the officers, asking, "What evidence do you have against me to accuse me of this?" In response, the officers suggested that an innocent person would not ask that question. Despite the pressure from the officers, Jerad maintained his innocence. He consistently denied any involvement in the Belen Perez's murder, acknowledging that he might be a criminal who had done a lot of messed up things, but he is not a murderer. Jerad rose higher up the police's list of suspects after each interview, especially the last one when Jerad put himself further into Belen Perez's home and worried about his fingerprints on an address book that was inside of her home. Officers actively pursued forensic evidence, conducting searches for usable prints at the crime scene without success. They collaborated with both the state's crime lab and later Sorensen Forensics, a private lab, to conduct DNA testing on various items. These items included the electrical cord, Belen Perez's wallet and purse, the coffee table from her living room, a cigarette butt found in her backyard, Belen Perez's fingernail scrapings, a chemical bottle cap, and pieces of clothing worn by both Belen Perez and Jared. Detailed findings from these tests revealed that some conclusively excluded Jared as a possible match, while others were inconclusive. None of the DNA tests definitively linked Jared to the crime scene. In September 2015, over a year since Belen Perez's murder, no charges had been filed against anyone. At this point, Jared was still incarcerated for the alleged assault of one of the residents of Tweakerville. To advance the investigation, officers organized an extensive inmate interview blitz with Jared's former and current cellmates. As a result of this, they made contact with an informant, one of Jared's past cellmates, who claimed to have information about Belen Perez's murder. This informant offered to testify against Jared in exchange for a transfer to a prison closer to his ill mother. He disclosed that he had previous ties to the Latin Kings gang and had discussed gang membership requirements with Jared when they were incarcerated together. According to the informant, he told Jared that to join the Latin Kings, one had to catch a body, to which Jared asked if it would count if he already did something bad to that extent. The informant also stated that Jared was worried about potential evidence linking him to the crime scene, such as a cigarette butt. Notably, the informant stressed that Jared never explicitly confessed to him about committing the murder, but Jared was saying that he had killed somebody indirectly. It wasn't until August 2018, more than 4 years after Belen Perez's tragic murder, that the state formally charged Jared with aggravated murder. The prosecution primarily relied on testimony from Jared's girlfriend, neighbors who witnessed his suspicious behavior on the day of the murder, Jared's admission of being present at Belen Perez's residence that day, and the information provided by the informant. In January 2019, as the case was in its early stages, a second informant came forward to authorities regarding Jared, whom he had shared a cell with in 2018. The second informant mentioned that Jared had a tattoo on his chest with the number 187, a known prison slang for murder. 187 is a term derived from the section of the California Penal Code dealing with murder. The second informant asked Jared, "Do you have a body?" Jared confirmed and proceeded to disclose details about the crime. According to the second informant, Jared admitted to killing some paisa when he had broken into her house to steal money and unexpectedly found her there. He told him that due to him sweating so much, he was concerned about leaving DNA evidence at the scene. He also stated that he poured bleach and Drano on Belen's body and planned to come back to set everything on fire, but his plan was ruined, as the police had already arrived at the crime scene. During the trial's opening statement, the state pointed out that attempts to destroy DNA evidence at the scene may have affected the results of the tests. The state extensively discussed the DNA evidence, emphasizing its inconclusive nature by telling the jury that even inconclusive forensic evidence holds weight as evidence. The state admitted that the DNA evidence failed to definitively link Jared to the crime. It was noted that the DNA found on the cigarette butt ruled out all residents of Tweakerville but lacked sufficient data for meaningful comparisons to Jared's DNA. During the trial, the state spent a lot of time discussing the cigarette butt within Belen Perez's yard. Discussions surrounding cigarettes, specifically the cigarette butt, were prevalent in both opening and closing arguments, as well as with 12 different witnesses, spanning over 95 pages in the trial transcript. Particularly during the closing argument, the state apologized to the jury for spending so much trial time on DNA evidence that it described as ultimately inconclusive. The state also told the jury that the answer to this case is not in the forensic evidence. The state openly addressed the police oversight regarding the failure to test the cigarette butt for Jared's DNA. Yet the state argued that the circumstances do suggest that the cigarette butt belonged to Jared. Notably, the state pointed out similarities between the brand of the cigarette butt and those Jared smoked, along with the presence of similar red-striped Camel cigarettes in Jared's backyard. Jared himself hinted in a police interview that the cigarette butt could have been his. The DNA found on the cigarette butt also ruled out all residents of Tweakerville. Ultimately, the state asserted that the evidence strongly implied that Jared had dropped the red-striped Camel cigarette in Belen Perez's yard. Similarly, the state highlighted results from DNA tests on the electrical cord, which excluded Jared and Belen's son as primary contributors, but revealed traces from multiple individuals, preventing experts from making significant comparisons. The state also mentioned that the suspect had attempted to erase DNA evidence through the use of bleach and other substances, possibly explaining why Jared's DNA was not detected on the tested items. The state also pointed out that not even Belen's son's DNA was conclusively found on the electrical cord, despite his admission of touching it upon discovering his mother's body. The state argued that the fact that DNA testing can't put Mr. Jared on the electrical cord doesn't mean anything except that the chemicals did their job and/or he had gloves on. Despite inconclusive DNA evidence, the jury found Jared guilty of aggravated murder, and he was sentenced to life without parole. As we conclude this video, let's take a moment to remember and honor Belen Perez, whose life was senselessly cut short. Our hearts go out to her family and loved ones who continue to endure this unimaginable loss. Thank you for watching.